Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to another Lions Talk. We've been away for a couple of weeks. We've not been here, but there has been a ton of Lions news. There's been a ton of footballing events, and there's been a ton of stuff to catch up on. So I'm very excited to get into it today. However, before we get into it, over the past week or so, we did have our first member join the channel in Dr. Detroit. He's been one of the longest time supporters of this channel. He is an amazing person to talk football with, one of my favorite people to talk with about the Detroit Lions. And although we disagree a lot, I, of course, respect his opinion. I love talking football with this guy, and I was so happy to see that he officially became a member. So as I said in the video, talking about the memberships, he will get early access to every video. He will get a lot of special perks that, you just would not get unless you were a member. And at the end of the month, he will get, and all of the members will get a special live stream from me. But with that being said, as people begin to roll in, I did have a talking point to begin with, and that was the undrafted free agency. Now, the Lions, of course, had their draft class. They had people, they had their draft class. They had the draft go on a couple of weeks ago, and they added a lot of very good talent to the roster. Ben is in here, says, Anthony, what's up, bud? How you doing, Ben? Hope you're having a fantastic day. I hope you are ready to talk some Lions football. So as I said, the Lions had a very, very successful draft. I thought they added a ton of good talent. They built the team right, seemingly, in this draft class, and I could not be more excited for training camp and preseason to begin. And we've touched on a couple of free agents. We've touched on a couple UDFA guys already, but I wanted to go through this list, kind of give just a quick opinion on it, kind of just give a little bit of, a quick overview of the UDFA, because there are a couple of guys in this class that I think are going to be really I think they're going to be guys that are going to be really, really big for the Detroit Lions, even though they are undrafted free agents. Ben says, Afro time in the house. Yes, sir. Bo, what's going on? How you doing today? Good to see you in the stream. So as we get into it, we're going to start with Rakeem Boyd. I talked about Rakeem Boyd a little bit yesterday. As it says right there, 5'11" and a half, 213 pounds. I think he's a good player. Here's Dr. Detroit. What's going on? How you doing today? What's up? Of course, Rakeem Boyd, talked about him a little bit yesterday. I think he's a really good player. He's a little bit inconsistent, but he is a guy that, can be a slasher, is a guy that can get you 5, 6, 7 yards on a run, isn't a guy that's super efficient, isn't a guy that's necessarily super consistent, but is a guy that if he's having a good day, if it's just one of those days where everything seems to be going right for him, if the blocking is good, he can be a really, really effective running back. And as I said yesterday, he is a pretty solid blocker as well, a pretty solid pass protector. So I think that's going to give him a little bit of an edge, and I think he is going to make the team as an undrafted free agent. Of course, Last Chance U, that whole storyline, I've watched him ever since then, and I've been really, really impressed with him. Derek Mills, the running back out of Nebraska, is another guy out of UDFA. He's a guy that I'm not as excited about. He's a guy that, I just don't see a lot from him. At least not as much as not as much as Rakeem Boyd. Bo here says, I'm actually excited to watch every quarter of preseason game for once. I know, me too. I think the Lions have a ton of depth going on. I think they have a ton of really, really good talent and a lot of really young talent, which I am just incredibly excited for. So we're going to see, of course, we're going to get to see all this talent put onto the field, and I'm excited to see this preseason. I think every single quarter of the 3 preseason games is going to be incredible. And, it's going to be very telling of what we're going to get out of this Lions team, both from a talent perspective as well as just a coaching perspective. So Derek Mills, to me, I think we have to see in the preseason. I haven't watched a ton of Derek Mills. I don't know a lot about him. So we'll have to wait and see. But, initial reaction, I'm not super thrilled about it, but I'm of course, happy that he's on the team. Of course, happy for the competition. Jonathan Adams Jr. is a guy that I am incredibly excited for. He's a guy 6'2", 210 pounds. As it says, Sun Belt Offensive Player of the Year, over 1,100 yards. I genuinely think he is going to make the roster and get some playing time this season because he is super, super talented. Dr. Detroit's in the building. So some of these guys have not played in 2 years, so it'll be fun to watch the team grow. I agree. Of course, last year, a lot of these players opted out. Jonathan Adams Jr. was one of those players. He hasn't played since 2019, so it's going to be really fun to see what he does. As it said, 2019, 79 catches, 1,100 yards, and 12 touchdowns. really, really good player. Like, I mean, there's not a guy that, the Lions have right now. I don't think they have that big body jump ball Moss kind of wide receiver. So I think he's going to be really good. That's kind of his skill set. That's kind of where he thrives in an NFL offense, or where he thrived in a college offense. So I think he's super talented. I genuinely think he can be a Kenny Golladay clone. He's kind of similar size, similar skill set, just really, really good player. And in UDFA, I think it was probably one of the best wide receivers. And I mean, overall, just a really, really good player. Bo says, and we have a staff to develop that young talent. Exactly. The Lions have a lot of really, really high potential things going for them. I mean, they have, some really good talent. They have some really good young talent for sure. That rookie class is really good. This UDFA class is really solid. Swift is young, Hawkinson's young, Ragnall's young, Decker's young, Sewell is obviously very, very young. We have a lot of young talent. And we have some young, inexperienced coaches, but coaches with a lot of high upside, and coaches that only get talked about and positively. So I'm very excited for it. Detroit says, yeah, it's like an Easter basket of players. That's actually very, very true. That's really, couldn't get more accurate than that one. I see Javon McKinley. I think he's a guy that could make the roster as well. This is a guy that I actually, I watched a little bit. He was very inconsistent at Notre Dame. I believe he opted out as well. I'm not sure, but I think he did. Maybe not, though. But he's a guy that, makes big plays. He's a guy that's inconsistent, kind of like Rakeem Boyd. He's a guy that when it's his day, when he's just playing well, he is a very tough wide receiver to stop. But again, is a guy that is inconsistent, a guy that's either a huge flash or just a very, very quiet throughout the day. So it really depends on training camp. It really depends if he can develop a little bit of consistency in his game. And I think that's the way with a lot of undrafted free agents, right? There are guys that, of course, have shown talent. They've shown the ability to play at a high level and have shown, at least the potential that they can be good players in the NFL, but they're guys that are just so inconsistent that you're not necessarily sure what you're going to get with them, and they're a little too risky to, at least draft. But in UDFA, these are guys that are just high potential, low reward. They're low risk, high reward kind of a guys, and I think Javon McKinley is exactly that. He's a guy that if he develops properly, if our new wide receiver coach, if Anthony Lynn, our new offensive coordinator, can mold him correctly into a top wide receiver, or into the wide receiver that he can be, he could be a wide receiver that, is probably wide receiver 5 on the roster at some point, and a guy that makes a ton of plays for the Detroit Lions. So again, a guy that wide receiver I think can make the roster. And speaking of wide receivers that can make the roster, Sage Serrat is the same way. I think the Lions, of course, they had a lot of turnover at their wide receiver position this year. And, with that being said, they went into the draft, and a lot of fans going into that draft were like, we have to draft at least 1, if not 2, or maybe even 3 wide receivers in this NFL draft. There's a lot of people that thought the Lions would go wide receiver at 7. There are people that thought the Lions might even go back-to-back wide receiver at 7 and at 41. However, they didn't end up doing that. Of course, they did get one wide receiver later in the draft in Amon-Ra St. Brown, my favorite player from the draft class, for very non-biased reasons, of course. But, I mean, I think the Lions have done a really good job. They had a lot of uncertainty at wide receiver, but right now in UDFA, they genuinely signed 3 players in Jonathan Adams Jr., Javon McKinley, and Sage Serrat that I think can all make the roster as undrafted free agent wide receivers. Now, Detroit says, did you see Dan's presser today about the team competition starts with coaches? I did not see that. I did not get a chance to watch that today. I was trying to catch up on some stuff. I've been very busy the last couple of days. That's why the uploads have been a little inconsistent. Sports-wise, I have a ton of games coming up, and I have AP tests and stuff and exams, and I've been very, very busy. So I did not get to see that, but I'll definitely go back and watch it at some point for sure. Sage Serrat, though, kind of similar to Jonathan Adams, a guy that I think can make the roster. Brock Wright, not so much. Out of Notre Dame, wasn't really utilized a ton at Notre Dame. They had a pretty good tight end group. As it says right there, highly athletic tight end, 9.2 RAS. So I think he has some athletic potential for sure. But, just overall, I'm not sure exactly what you're going to get with him. I think it's going to be fun to see him in the preseason. If his RAS score is anything to indicate, he should be a pretty athletic, big play kind of a guy. But, we'll have to see. We'll have to see for sure. But, again, I think he's a guy with high potential. But, again, we have a pretty solid tight end core. TJ is really, really good. I believe we just signed Darren Fells back, who had 11 touchdowns over the past 2 seasons. So we'll see. We'll see on Brock Wright. I think he has a chance, but I think his chance is a little bit lesser than some other guys. Jake Hausman, a guy from tight end. I think Dr. Detroit says sports, you a swimmer or track? Well, I play soccer. I'm a soccer player. We got a busy schedule coming up, so I've been really busy with that. But yeah, I play soccer, so that's my sport. Jake Hassman, tight end from Ohio State, solid player. I think that he probably won't beat out. I think he has a less of a chance to make the roster as a tight end than the guy up here than Brock Wright. But again, guy that they're probably going to compete for that last 10 end spot, those two UDFAs. I'd probably give the edge to Wright, but you'll never know for sure. Tommy Kramer, guard from Notre Dame, I think is a guy that I think he can make the roster. I think he has some pretty good skills for an NFL player. As it says, a 4-year starter, right guard, will need to stay inside in the NFL, struggles with athletes on the edge. Fair enough, causing technique to waver. There's a chance for him to stick around at guard. So I think he can make the roster. I think he's a guy. And of course, the Lions addressed the trenches a ton in the draft, but they did get a couple good trench players outside the draft in UDFA as well. Tommy Kramer is one of those guys. I think he could be the 4th guard on the roster. You keep him, you keep Logan Stenberg, you keep Jonah Jackson, and you keep probably Big V as your 4 guards, 2 starting, 2 backup, have some rotation in there. I think that would be pretty solid. And I think Tommy Kramer could make it as the final guard on the roster. You go down, Drake Jackson is a guy that I'm very, very excited for. A guy that's 6'2", 292 pounds. He was one of the best UDFA players available, at least according to all the analysts, all the big boards. I mean, he's a guy that just has some high potential. I think he's going to make the roster as the backup center. And as a UDFA guy, I mean, you don't necessarily expect all of them to make the roster, but Drake Jackson, I believe, gave up only 1 sack in his entire career at Kentucky. He's a very solid player. He's a guy that, of course, played with our current backup left guard in Logan Stenberg. They have some chemistry. I'm excited to see him in the preseason. I think he can be a really solid backup center. And although obviously Frank Ragnow just got his big extension, he's going to be here long term. If he does miss a game like he did last year, I mean, I feel confident Drake Jackson stepping in for it. If Big V doesn't return to shape, they need to ship him out. I don't disagree. I just think it's going to be really, really tough with the contract for them to do that. But I think that, they've been very good with the cap. If the Lions needed to make a move, if Brad Holmes felt like he needed to make a move, he made it. So I don't necessarily think that it's, a guarantee that they can't move him. I don't think it's fair to say that it's impossible to do it, but it would be, a little sticky situation. But yeah, I agree. I think we have the talent where Big V doesn't even need to be a starter at this point. Like, genuinely, if the Detroit Lions find a financially feasible way to ship him out, I think they're going to do it, because Big V to me just doesn't have a long-term role or really a top role in this offense at all. Now, Tavante Beckett, linebacker out of Marshall, undersized, 5'10", 210 or 220 pounds. A guy that I think is okay. I think he could be a special teamer, and I think we'll see a little bit from him in preseason. I think has potential to make the practice squad, but I don't think is necessarily a guy that we're going to see making a lot of plays on Sundays, unfortunately enough. Jerry Jacobs is a guy that, is kind of a weird situation, because he did have 4 interceptions as a freshman at Arkansas State, did transfer to Arkansas, the Razorbacks in the SEC, didn't really get another interception, didn't play a whole lot, as it says, teared his ACL in 2019 and opted out in 2020 after just 4 games. Like, he's played 8 games in the past 2 seasons. And when he did play an entire season, he had 4 interceptions and a ton of passes defended in the Sun Belt. But in the SEC, he struggled to stay healthy, and then he opted out and genuinely just didn't play very well. Like, I wouldn't say he's a bad cornerback. And I think if he does kind of get back to his freshman, sophomore kind of role and playing style and just the way he was playing early in his college career, I think he'd have a chance. He does have decent ball skills, but again, a little bit undersized, nothing really special. After his ACL, doesn't really look like the same player, but I do think that he could be okay, right? As it says right here, 16 games in, I believe, in his first season of college football. I can't remember if it was his freshman or sophomore season that he first got his real playing time. But 16 games at Arkansas State, 4 interceptions, 8 passes defended, less than 50% completion percentage. He has some ball skills. He really does. He has some ability to play football, and I like him. I think he could make the roster. Our cornerback room is pretty solid, but if the Lions, especially if they do move either Okudah or Ifedi to safety, I think you could see him potentially making the roster. I just saw that Dan Campbell press conference. I'm stoked. I need to go watch it. I haven't seen it yet, but y'all are talking it up, and I'm pretty excited for it. AJ Parker, Nickelback, I believe that would be out of Kansas State. To me, I think we have a Nickelback, right? I think Corn Elder can play that kind of nickel, that slot cornerback, or I think you could throw a couple other guys. I think Mike Ford would fit that role just fine. I don't think he's going to make the roster. He's definitely not going to make it over even Jerry Jacobs from Arkansas. But yeah, I mean, I think he's an okay player. I think he's a pretty good camp body. I might see him make a couple plays, but I wouldn't really expect anything crazy out of him either. One Pratt says, "What's up? It's been a minute." Yes, it has been. It's been a while. It has been. But I'm very excited to be back, man. A lot of news, a lot of stuff going on. Could not be more excited to get back here talking with some Lions football. Alexander's in the building today. What's going on? Says, "Hey, Ryder, did you hear the trade rumors about Crosby?" I look up the trade things. The trade one is Jags getting Crosby, Lions getting Colin Johnson, and a 5th-round pick. I wouldn't be mad at that. I have heard the rumors about Tyrell Crosby potentially being traded. I like Tyrell Crosby. I do. I think he's probably one of the best backup tackles, backup offensive linemen in general in the NFL. He's a guy that did start last year. I thought had some good moments last year. Is a guy that, obviously as Brad Holmes has shown and as the coaching staff has shown, they don't think he is a full-time starter, but, of course, because they drafted Penny Sewell to take his position. But I do think he's one of the best backups in the NFL. I think if somebody was to get hurt, whether that be Taylor Decker, whether that be Penny Sewell, Penny Sewell maybe gets COVID again, or, has some other illness, or, maybe Tyler, or, maybe Taylor Decker gets, coronavirus or something. Like, I think he'd be a good backup, a good guy to come in and replace. So I don't know how I feel about trading him. It's really going to depend on the value. But if it's not at least a 5th-round pick and maybe something else, I'd feel kind of sketchy because, he is relatively cheap right now, still on a 5th-round rookie contract. So I wouldn't be, necessarily upset if we traded him, but I do want to get at least a 5th-round pick plus maybe like a 5th and 6th or maybe like a 4th-round pick. I don't want to give him up for nothing. Second trade option is Steelers get Crosby and Lions get wide receiver James Washington. I'd be okay with that. I'd be really excited for that one for sure. Drafting Sewell was a robbery. He shouldn't have been there. Should not have been there. Absolutely. Steal of the draft, or at least steal of the first round, in my opinion. Penny Sewell, top 3 player in the class easily. It was Lawrence. And then I think you could even make that. I think you can make the argument that Penny Sewell was the number 2 player in this class. Like, he is a phenomenal player. And the fact that we got him at 7 is just absolute highway robbery. Like, there's no other way to put it. Third option is the Jets get Crosby and a 3rd-round pick and a 3rd-round pick in 2020. And I wouldn't get that one. I would not do the Jets one. I wouldn't give up a 3rd-round pick for Denzel Mims and Tyrell Crosby. I don't think that's very good value. But the Steelers one, I think, is pretty solid. I would take the Steelers one. James Washington, I think, has some potential. I don't know Ulysses Gilbert III very well, but even Crosby for James Washington straight up, I think could be interesting because he's kind of young, has made some big plays, and has shown some real ability as far as being a football player. So I like it. I do. Let's see. D'Angelo Amos, safety / returner from Virginia. Solid player. A guy that, again, I don't think is necessarily going to be the greatest safety, and I don't know if he's going to make the team. But if there is going to be a position to have a UDFA added, I think it's going to be safety. Outside of Tracy Walker, our safety room is pretty shallow. So D'Angelo Amos is going to definitely have an opportunity. If he makes some plays in the preseason, I could definitely see him making the roster. As it says right here, D'Angelo Amos plays a ton of single high and shows off impressive range and coverage instincts. I think he's a guy that could definitely make the team for sure. One Private 40 says the Bengals made a mistake drafting Chase. I think Chase is going to be a good player, but I don't understand how, as an NFL franchise with your, potential franchise quarterback coming off of I don't see how you can look at that. Your quarterback's coming off an ACL tear, an injury that could end his career potentially. Obviously, it looks like it's not. It looks like he's going to be fine, but an injury that could have ended his career, almost ended Teddy Bridgewater's career, took him out for a very, very long time. I don't see how you look at that and say, yeah, but he didn't have wide receivers to throw to, or yeah, but he, needs an extra wide receiver. Like, I just don't see that. I guess we're out of UDFAs or something. Okay. But, I don't know how you look at that and you say, okay, let's get a wide receiver over arguably the best offensive tackle prospect since Trent Williams. Like I don't see how you look at that and say, yeah, our offensive line is horrible. Joe Burrow's coming off a bad injury, but we're gonna take a wide receiver. And again, good wide receiver for sure, but how do you warrant taking a wide receiver? I guess it is all the UDFAs. That's crazy. Like I just don't understand that logic by the Cincinnati front office. Alexander says, I really hope Jonathan Adams makes the team. I do as well. I think he's a real solid player. Again, I think he could beat Kenny Galladay if developed correctly. Kenny Galladay didn't create a ton of separation. Neither does Jonathan Adams Jr. Kenny Galladay, very good at high pointing the football, same as Kenny Galladay. He's not afraid of contact in the air, just like Kenny Galladay. Like he has a lot of similarities. I mean, you watch his college highlights, you watch Kenny Galladay's NFL highlights, they're pretty similar. Like, I think he can be a Kenny Galladay clone. I really, really do. And I don't know how our wide receiver coach is going to develop it, but we'll see. He says they really believe in Riley Reef. That's going to get somebody hurt. I will say that. I know the Lions have a couple other guys. They have a couple of tryouts. One of the guys that they did bring in was Nick Pickett, safety out of Oregon. I haven't looked at him actually a lot. I know he's a pretty solid box safety from what I've heard. So I actually like him. Deuce is fired up with these really good running back rooms. Yeah, I think our running back room is really, really solid. But you look at Nick Pickett, he's a guy that's actually in camp right now. He's kind of on a tryout basis, so he doesn't have a contract yet, but there are 4 of these guys. I can't remember the other 3. But Nick Pickett was kind of the big name. He's a safety out of Oregon, definitely more of a box safety, 6'1", 210 pounds. As you can see, he's 4-year player at Oregon, was relatively healthy. I don't know if he opted out last season. Oh, that's an ad. I don't know if he opted out last season or what the reasoning was for him, not playing a ton, only playing in 6 games, but, had, played quite a few games, had 165 total tackles, had 2 interceptions, 12 passes defended, a forced fumble. Like he's a player that makes plays for Oregon. Like he was solid. I think he can make the team as well. Again, that safety room is really, really shallow. So it's I think he can make the roster as well. I think it's going to be him and DeAndre Amos to make that safety spot. And I think you're going to see one of the UDFA safeties get some playing time this year as a starter. Bo says the best players will make it. I'm not seeing any favoritism with these guys. I don't think so. I mean, I don't see any guy that I haven't heard anything where it's like there's one guy that's like guaranteed to make the roster, one guy that they're in love with, or one guy that they're showing bias to. But I do think that all of these guys, I mean, almost anybody in this UDFA class, I think has the potential to, make the team for sure. I don't think there's a guy on the UDFA list right now. I don't think there's a guy in a rookie training camp right now that can't make the roster. I don't think there's any guy that's a shoe-in to just be a camp body and get out, which is not the case with last year. I don't think, there were a couple of guys last year where it was like, this guy's just here for camp. There's almost no way he makes the roster. I don't see that this year. I think almost every single UDFA player can make the roster this year. And I think you can make a case for any UDFA player that they're going to make the roster this year. It all starts with the O-line. Even if you have a really good running back, but a bad O-line, it won't work out. It's like a puzzle. It won't connect together, but I think the Lions are going in the right direction. I 100% agree. As I said, they address the trenches a ton, and I think the Lions have one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. Taylor Decker is no doubt a top 5 left tackle, or played like a top 5 left tackle last year in the NFL. Frank Ragnow is a top 2 center in the NFL. Penei Sewell, it's hard to say because we haven't seen him play, but I can't imagine he'd be, worse than a top 15 tackle in the NFL right now, a top 15 right tackle. I'd say it's hard to imagine that. Jonah Jackson struggled a little bit at times, had some rookie mistakes, of course, last year, but at the same time, showed a ton of flash, showed a ton of potential, and showed that he can be a full-time starting, really good caliber guard. Our offensive line is really, really good across the board. The only question right now really being that right guard position. But if Big V can fill in there and even play at an average level, the Lions are going to have a top 5 offensive line. Not to mention that now you have Drake Jackson, a backup center from Kentucky that's really, really solid. You have, Logan Stenberg, a backup guard from Kentucky as well. That's really solid, could be really nasty in the run game. You have, the right guard UDFA out of Notre Dame who could be really solid. Like, I genuinely think our offensive line could be a top 5, if not even a top 3 unit unit in the NFL next season. And, if you don't have a top 10 quarterback, if you don't have a top 5 quarterback, which the Lions do not right now, you need a top 5 offensive line to be successful. And that's the exact way the Lions are looking to build right now. One price for says, what draft pick produced day one besides Sewell? I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to produce. I really, really do. And, it's not biased. Of course, I have maybe a little connection to him, but I genuinely think he's going to come in and make plays. Even in the rookie highlights like that have come out the past couple of days, like you see him making some nice catches, you see him running some good routes. I think he's going to start in the slot day one. I think Jared Goff likes his slot wide receivers. He's a guy that kind of fits the mold of what Jared Goff has worked with before. And I genuinely think Amon-Ra is going to come in day one, be a starter, and be a really, really good player. Outside of that, I think Ifedi is going to be really solid day one as well. I think he could have potentially been a day one talent. There was some buzz about him being a first round kind of a guy. And I think he was better than some of the guys drafted on day one, to be totally honest. So, I think those are two guys that are going to be, guys that weren't drafted super early, but are guys that are going to maybe even be starters on day one. I could see Ifedi starting at the other safety position, and I could definitely see Amon-Ra starting in the slot. Alexander says, to me, don't trade Crosby, add depth. The more depth you have, the better. You can never have enough depth, basically, is what he's saying. I agree. I think that, especially with Tyrell Crosby, that offensive line looks really deep and really, really good. As I said, Taylor Decker, left tackle, top 5 tackle in the NFL. You have, Jonah Jackson, I would say at least top 15 right guard in the NFL. Solid player, nothing crazy, but not, horrible either. I'd say he's a solid right guard. Frank Ragnow, best center in the NFL, arguably to me, the best center in the NFL, and definitely the best young center in the NFL. Right guard, question mark, but Big V, I think, can play fine at that position. I think he can be average at the left guard position. You have Penny Sewell, who is going to be a full-time starter who should be really, really good for the Detroit Lions and really complete that offensive line. Even the backups, Tyrell Crosby is your backup tackle, right? He can play left or right tackle and step in, and you're not going to have a ton of concern that he's going to have a huge drop-off in production from either of the other two players. You have, as I said, backup center who's kind of filled out right now. You have at least one, if not 2 or 3 backup guards that you feel comfortable with. Like the Lions have a really good, deep offensive line. And I think if you move Crosby, you're just unnecessarily taking away from that offensive line. And of course, if there's a good enough offer, I take it, right? If it was like a 3rd round pick for this year, I definitely take it. But if it's not like a really solid offer, like it's just kind of like we'll give you like a 5th round pick, or we'll give you a 6th round pick, I wouldn't get rid of him because I just don't think at that point it's worth it. Alexander says, on paper, the Lions have a running game. The Lions had a running game on paper last year too, so we'll just have to see. The draft pick I'm least worried about is Sewell because he's going to be one of the best O-line coach. He's going to one of the best O-line coaches in the league. That's true, and that's another point that I hadn't talked about yet is the Lions O-line coach is really, really good. He was a guy that actually just re-signed with the Lions, was here last year. Had some other job offerings, of course, because the Lions offensive line was really good a season ago, and he decided to come back to Detroit. He sees what's going on here. He loves working with these guys, sees that he could have a top offensive line unit in the NFL next year. Came back, is a guy that, as One Pride 40 says, one of the best O-line coaches in the NFL. It's just going to make our offensive line that much better. So I'm super, super stoked for it. I'm excited for this season, but absolutely giddy about the future. When we get out from under some of these pre-existing contracts, 100%. The Lions, I think, are going to be competitive this year, but as soon as the Stafford dead cap is gone, as soon as, the Trey Flowers contract is gone, the Jamie Collins contract is gone in a couple of years, we are going to have a ton of cap space with a super, super young team, and it's going to be really... it's going to be a prime window for the Detroit Lions to go into Super Bowl. I genuinely think by the year 2023, the Lions are going to be Super Bowl contenders because they're going to have a lot of cap. They're going to have a lot of young players with a few years of experience. They're going to have a lot of really impactful young players, and they're going to need just a couple veteran players here and there with some experience, and they are going to be dangerous in the NFL. One Pride Force says, my worry is that if Crosby, who's going to be our swing tackle, because swing tackles have value and injuries can definitely happen. That's another thing too. If you have a swing tackle for a reason, Big V could potentially be that swing tackle. But I think if you just have Crosby, it gives you so much more flexibility with your O-line that, as I said, unless it's a really, really good offer, I wouldn't get rid of Crosby. Levi and Aleem just made our D-line better and upgraded 100%. Next year, it depends on where we are in the draft. It depends, of course, where we sit. But if, the Lions are as bad as all the media says we're going to be, we could potentially get Kayvon Thibodeau. I mean, elite edge rusher, like the next Chase Young, maybe better. As an edge rusher, complete that defensive line. If not, I know Garrett Wilson's a wide receiver. Haskell Garrett, I think from Ohio State's really good. Aiden Hutchinson from Michigan's really good. Like next year, I think we could upgrade an edge rusher, and I think that line would be complete. But yeah, Levi and Aleem are going to make this D line really tough to run on, and I think it's going to be really, really good for the Detroit Lions. I think their defense is going to look much better next year because of the defensive line upgrades. And I mean, I think the Lions are just going to be better all around because unlike Matt Patricia, the Lions are finally building in the trenches and they're finally building that up first. And as I've said multiple times, a lot of Lions fans, a lot of DSA members have said the trenches make you a good football team. They really do. And I was talking, if you don't know, I'm related to the NFL's lead photographer, a guy that's around the NFL all the time and knows a lot about football, and he said something that we went to lunch the one day at the draft and we were talking, and he said, if you don't have a top 3 quarterback in the NFL, you need a top 3 offensive line. And I think that kind of goes for the same with defense, right? If you don't have a top 3 secondary, you need a top 3 defensive line. Like if you don't have a great secondary, which the Lions on paper have a better one this year, but the Lions secondary wasn't great last year, and so they need a better defensive line. I think the trenches are where you got to build, and I'm super excited for the way the Lions have built this so far. I think we should hold on to Crosby. I'm with you. I think Flowers is gone next year, and I hope we draft a defensive end next year. I'm with you there as well. I don't think we'll be able to afford Crosby and take care of the other holes. The Big V contract hurts our options. I agree. Big V, poor contract when it was signed for sure, but it looks a little bit worse now, especially since he's not even playing a starting tackle position. It may not even be playing a starting position at all. But next year is its own thing, right? Next year we'll find more money somewhere. I'm focused on this year right now, and right now Tyrell Crosby gives us the best option to win. It gives us the best opportunity, gives us the best depth on the team. So, I mean, I get what you're saying. Like, I don't know if we'll be able to afford Tyrell Crosby a year or two down the road, but at the same time, Trey Flowers his contract may be gone by next season. Stafford's dead cap money is going to be gone by next season. They're going to get a little bit more money back each and every year, and I think that we're going to be able to afford Crosby. Crosby should not be incredibly expensive. I'd expect, a decent contract because he has started before. He's a quality player, but I wouldn't expect us to break the bank. So, I don't think it's going to be crazy. I really don't think it's going to be a crazy contract, and I think we will be able to afford him. I do. I'd like to see the defensive secondary improve. I hope Ifedi is good. I think Ifedi is going to be great. Alexander says Spencer Rattler to the Lions. We'll see. I think Spencer Rattler, of course, has a ton of talent. Was the QB1 coming out of the 2019 class, I want to say. Oklahoma player right now, finished the season incredibly strong. Started a little bit shaky. Had some turnover problems his first couple of games as a Sooner, but got benched, kind of got a reality check, and kind of got back in it and finished the season, as I said, phenomenally well. So, it depends. I'm not gonna say draft a quarterback. We definitely got to see what Goff does first. I'm not gonna talk about quarterbacks a lot until Goff plays. If it hits week 9, week 10, and Goff is playing like some hot trash, quarterback might be the move. But Spencer Rattler, I think, definitely has some talent. And if Goff does not play very well this year, I think you could see Spencer Rattler be the pick for the Detroit Lions, especially if we get, if we don't play very well. 1/40 says, Bo, if somebody gets hurt, then what? Let's talk about Tyrell Crosby. That's kind of what we mentioned. Bob Quinn was awful with contracts, 100%. Heavy pass on who? Heavy pass. Oh, I got you. On Spencer Rattler. Fair enough. But I believe we should draft a defensive end next year with a deep defensive end class, and we'll complete the other side. I agree 100%. Rather has some character issues. That's fair. That's a fair assessment. I see what you're saying there. I think he's a little bit overconfident. Like he's a little bit cocky, kind of showboaty kind of a guy. I get that. But you can't deny he does have some talent. You can't deny that he's a talented football player. I do get the character concerns. I really do. And he's kind of a me before the team kind of a player. At least that's how it comes across to me. So I do get it. But like I said, you can't deny the talent. But as I also said, I'm not going to really talk or seriously talk quarterbacks until we see Jared Goff on the field. I think the Lions are going to be better than a lot of people think. I've been saying that for weeks and probably months. If you follow Dan Campbell's idea of putting players where they are best, where do you see Okudah, cornerback or safety? I think Okudah is going to be a better safety in the NFL than cornerback. I really do. And I think Okudah would be a good cornerback. I think Okudah could be a good cornerback in the NFL. I think he could be a solid starting caliber guy in the NFL for a very long time. However, I also think that Okudah could be an elite safety. I really do. Okudah to me is a guy that is not really the fastest, is a guy that can press you for sure, can be very physical, is a great tackler. I think Okudah looks better at safety. I think his skill set is better at safety. So I think he could be a good cornerback, but I think he could be a top safety in the NFL. So to me, he looks better at safety, but I don't know if that's going to be the case. One part 40 says, well, good. I don't want a quarterback in 2022. That class is bad. I don't think it's bad, but I don't think it's quite as talented as this year's, but of course, we have a whole other college football season to talk about before we even get there. So, one part 40 also says the question is, what are we doing with Melifonwu? Again, kind of like the Okudah thing. I think he can play safety. I think he can play cornerback. I think he'll be a good corner and a great safety. They're kind of similar players. I think Ifedi has a little bit higher upside, just athletically wise. I think he runs a little faster, is a little bit bigger. But I mean, I'm not mad at it. Like, I like the pick. It adds, of course, some talent to our secondary. So, and of course, with all these players, you might think it's a bad thing where it's like, oh, we're getting into training camp and we don't know if Okudah is a safety. We don't know if Okudah is a cornerback. We don't know if, Melifonwu is a cornerback or a safety. You could look at that and say, that's a bad thing. I think it's great. I think it gives so much flexibility to this team, so much flexibility to a young secondary. And genuinely, I think that this team and this secondary in general is going to take a huge step forward because of the flexibility and versatility that our new cornerbacks bring. Melifonwu, hey, I exist. That's kind of the boat he's in right now. I've seen Okudah rush the passer. He's not afraid to hit. Jeff Okudah is not afraid to hit. I will tell you that. I love Dan Campbell's energy. That's the one thing that I love the most about Dan Campbell. I did get a chance to talk to him. Like, he's such a fiery guy. I love talking to him. He's such a cool guy. Loves the game of football. You could just tell. It's infectious. I love this. We're going to kick you in the teeth, right? And then we're going to punt. And when you punch us back, we're going to smile at you. And when you knock us down, take a kneecap. Greatest opening quote or greatest quote from an opening press conference I think I've ever heard. But on that defensive end train, it doesn't have to be Thibodeau. It doesn't, but if it is Thibodeau, that man is going to be different, I think. He's a monster. Have you seen the latest? I have not seen it, but man, oh man, am I excited to see that presser. His first couple outings with the media have just been phenomenal. I mean, I genuinely think there's something special there. And a couple, before the signing happened, we were kind of talking. We were all kind of on the Robert Saleh hype train, right? We were like, oh, that's our guy. Dan Campbell, I think, has a lot of similarities to Robert Saleh from a passion standpoint, from an idea standpoint. Like, I don't think there's going to be a big difference in coaching style between the two. So, and, of course, the biggest selling point with Dan Campbell was his passion for the game, his ability to motivate players in his team building. And so far, he gets an A+ on all of it. I mean, his press conferences so far have gotten all the fans excited. He seems to be a guy that just has an infectious personality, at least on the fans, and it's gonna be infectious on the players. He's built a really good staff, has built a really solid football team to go into 2021. Like, I think Dan Campbell is going to be a very good head coach, and he's done everything right so far. So Saleh forgot he was the head coach. I saw that. I did see that. That was really funny. I think the Lions and now Tebow playing in the NFL again are the stories of the season. I agree. I don't think Tebow is going to be big. I genuinely don't think that Tim Tebow is going to be some huge impactful player. I mean, good for him that he's back in the league. Good for him that he got a job. I don't see him being anything crazy, but he'll probably get a touchdown and the NFL world will explode. See, you have to go take care of y'all. And as always, go Lions. Have a good day, Alexander. Glad you could pop by for a little bit. We're going to be on first a little bit longer, but it was good to see you, man. Good to talk Lions with you. Hope we can see you back soon. So, yeah, Urban Meyer looks like a disaster. Yeah, he does. My video on Urban Meyer looking a little worse by the day. I'm not going to lie. Definitely, I think he's adjusting to the NFL a little rough. But who knows? I mean, we haven't seen anybody play yet, right? We haven't seen the Jaguars play a game yet. So if we're not going to judge the Lions, if we're not going to judge, everybody else this year before they play, I'm not going to judge the Jacksonville Jaguars until they hit the field. That's kind of how I am with everybody, every team. I, of course, make projections. Of course, I think that you can look at certain teams and certain players and say that's how it's going to be. But at the same time, I'm not gonna, say that Urban Meyer's a bad coach in the NFL until he loses football games. And so far, he hasn't lost a lot of football games. So I can't say that too far, but I can definitely agree that he's made some questionable decisions. James Willis says, well, I see Tebow come back as an absurdity. I don't know, man. I don't know. It's pretty questionable. I'm not going to lie. MCDC's best attribute is knowing his limitations. That's dirty Harry wisdom. Fair enough. And I think that's something that he does well I think that's something MCDC does well is, I think he knows what he doesn't know, if that makes sense. Like, he understands what he's good at. He understands where his strengths are, and he understands where his weaknesses are. And he's not afraid to say, I can't do this right. He's not afraid to say, I can't do this by myself. Or he's not afraid to say that this is not my strong suit. Whereas, at the same time, Matt Patricia didn't do that. Matt Patricia was just not going to admit when he was wrong or when he couldn't do something. Whereas I think Dan Campbell is going to ask for help. Dan Campbell is going to know where his strengths and weaknesses lie, and he's going to put people around him that are going to play off, and they're going to build off of him, right? If he can't say, of course, he's not a guy that was hyped up to be, the greatest X's and O's guy. He's going to know that. So that's why he brought in a head coach, a former head coach as our offensive coordinator, as a guy that has done the X's and O's, that has run a team, that has experience. He knows his weaknesses, and he's going to put people around him to help support the weaknesses that he has. One preference is just imagine if we hired Myers. Yikes. Again, we'll have to wait and see, but for sure, right now it's looking a little questionable. I'm not worried about Justin Fields going to the Bears because we got interior pass rush. I like Justin Fields as a prospect. I think he was really good. He was my quarterback 3. And to me, should not have fallen to 11 in any way, shape, or form. But he's a good quarterback. Justin Fields is really solid. The only thing I will say, the Bears don't develop quarterbacks at all. Like, they've never been able to do it. And Matt Nagy couldn't develop Mitch Trubisky very well. You have Justin Fields, who I think is miles better than Mitch Trubisky. I think he's just more talented. He's way smarter. I think he protects the football way better, and just all around is a bigger, better, faster, stronger Mitch Trubisky. And smarter, if I didn't say that. But at the same time, the Bears don't develop quarterbacks. Their system is not quarterback friendly. So I don't know. I think Justin Fields is super talented. I think he's going to be fine in the NFL, but I don't know. The Bears, I think, is the worst situation he could have gone to, in my opinion. What are your thoughts on the wide receivers brought in? I love Amon-Ra St. Brown's steal. Maybe the steal of the class. I'm not going to lie. Like, he was really good value. Jonathan Adams Jr. is pretty solid. I think he's all right. Sage Serrat, solid wide receiver. Javon McKinley, solid wide receiver. If you're talking UDFA, or if you're talking free agents in general from the offseason, Tyrell Williams, I think, is a good player. Brashad Perryman, I think, is a good player. Damian Ratley, I think, is a good player. Like, I don't think we have bad players, but I don't think we have a superstar on the roster yet at wide receiver, which is fine because we've had superstar wide receivers and we don't do anything with them. So I would rather build up the trenches first and find that superstar in 2 to 3 years versus having him for 2 to 3 years now and not being able to do anything with it. Brad Holmes is the same thing, 100%. I agree, is a bad spot for Fields. I think the Bears is the worst. I think the Bears is the worst situation for Justin Fields. We're sweeping the Bears, boys. I hope so. I hope the Lions can do well. But I think they're built to win in the NFC North. The NFC North is a division where you have to be able to run the ball and play defense, right? It's not going to be a division where you're going to see a ton of shootouts. It's kind of known as that black and blue division because almost everybody in the North can run the football and play defense, right? The Packers have Aaron Jones. They had a top offensive line last season. They ran the ball well, and their defense played fine. The Minnesota Vikings had a really good rushing attack. Their defense got way better near the end of the season. The Bears, when they were good a couple years ago, ran the ball, and they had a top defense in the NFL. The Lions right now built up an offensive line. I believe they have the best offensive line in the North right now. They have DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams, two guys that can definitely run the football well. So they have the running the football part down to a T. They have to play defense now. So if they can do that, if they can play solid defense, they're going to be a good football team. Unpride 40 says, if St. Brown's a bust, I'm blaming you. Hey, he's not going to be a bust, though, so I'm not worried about it. He says, I'm just playing. I think he'll be a dog. He's going to get a ton of targets. I agree. I 100% agree. As I said, I think Amon-Ra is a guy that kind of fits the mold of what Jared Goff has played with before. So I think there's that. So I think there's going to be a little bit more comfortability there with Jared Goff throwing to a wide receiver that, of course, he hasn't played with before, but he's played with that skill set before. So I think that's really going to help Jared Goff be better. And I think it's only going to help Amon-Ra get off to a faster start than maybe he otherwise would with Stafford or any other quarterback. He says, and plus, they have no offensive line. The Bears, 100%. Chris Barman used to call the NFC Central the NFC Norris division. Yeah, I mean, it's a brutal one. It's not easy to win the North. Vikings are a different story. If we split with them, I'd be pumped, but I'm not holding my breath for that. I think we can split with the Vikings. I mean, we should have split the Vikings last year. We definitely were the better team in that Week 17 matchup. We were definitely the better football team, and I think we should have won that game. A couple calls went the wrong way, which is unfortunate. A couple penalties that shouldn't have been penalties is unfortunate. It is what it is at this point. But, I think we should have split with them last year. I feel like we usually play the Vikings okay. Like last year, I thought we played the Vikings really well in Week 17. I thought we played the Packers really well Week 15 or Week 14, whenever we played them the second game. Like I thought the Lions last year, especially at the end of the season with a guy in the room like Darrell Bevel that brought that energy, brought that fire, had some fun, used some players differently. The Lions were way more competitive with those in-division games than they were with Matt Patricia. So I think we will split with the Vikings this year. I really do. And like you said, if we do that, I'd be super excited because that I think gives us at least 3 wins in the division because I think we're a better football team than the Bears. I think we're right on par with the Vikings, and I think we can compete with the Packers. I really, really do. One Prep 40 says we are at least top 10 draft, and if you pay attention, the RAS charts, most of our guys are in the green. That's true, and that's something I like as well. As we brought in a ton of athletes that can be molded into a scheme versus a lot of scheme specific guys that you can't develop athleticism. I'd even go as far to say the Lions at a top 5 draft. I would feel comfortable arguing the Lions at a top 5 draft for what they were trying to accomplish. And if you were to ask Brad Holmes, I don't think there's many other ways he would have had this draft go in his head. Like if you ask Brad Holmes his perfect draft from 2021, I think it'd be very similar to what we saw play out in the actual draft class. Alec G says, personally, I hope we don't do well this year. I want a high pick to get a good quarterback and replace Goff down the road. I mean, again, I'm not going to say that I want to replace Goff until I've seen him play in Detroit and see the system that we're running. But I know there's always going to be people that want a new quarterback. That's just the way it is. I wonder how we will use Barnes. I don't know. Barnes is kind of an interesting guy. I think they said that he would play Mike, which is an interesting position. Of course, I think he can play a lot of different positions, but I think he can play pretty much any linebacker. He played the Jack at college. He played the Will, played the Mike. So he can play anything, really. He can play any position. I think they said they want to use him more at the Mike. But I think as I kind of said in the breakdown of him, I think we're going to see a kind of similar role to Jared Davis, where they're not going to drop him into coverage a lot. He's going to be a guy that's going to blitz the quarterback. He's going to get some pressure. As I said, he can play the Jack linebacker position off the edge and get some pressure. That's kind of the role I see for him right now. And I don't see him playing every down. I don't see him being a full-time starter, but I definitely see Derek Barnes getting some playing time and being involved with certain defensive packages in certain areas. You know what I mean? I think goal line especially, I think you're going to see Derek Barnes a lot. I think, short yardage situation, you're going to see Derek Barnes a lot. And especially if we're running something where we're trying to get pressure on the quarterback, I think you could definitely see Derek Barnes sub out Alex Anzalone or maybe even Jamie Collins to get, a bigger, stronger guy in there to push the pocket a little bit. Bo says, I'm hoping for Goff. I already bought an autographed football. Pretty sweet. Motor City Sports says, I see 8 to 9 wins. That's what I'm seeing. That's what I'm seeing as well. I think 8 to 9, I think is pretty realistic for the Lions for sure. One part for you says, Alec, no, you don't. Motor City says, also, I hate people that want to tank. We need to improve. 100% agree. One part 40 says, Derek Barnes is definitely not a coverage guy. 100% with you. If we tank, free agents don't want to come here. That's another thing as well. Like, why would somebody want to sign here if they weren't going to be on a winning franchise? Everybody talks about the draft and they're like, oh, we want a higher draft pick. But at the same time, if you get a higher draft pick, then you're going to be worse in free agency. And yes, you build through the draft, but free agency is integral. It's huge. It's a huge part of team building, and you're not going to get good players to come to your team if you're a losing football team. Don versus 5 to 6 wins tops. I don't see it. I genuinely don't. Matt Patricia uttered 5 wins last year. Dan Campbell, this new coaching staff in general, I believe is going to get the new coaching staff gets you at least 2 more wins on top of that. I think at a minimum, we see 7 wins for the Lions. At a minimum. I just want to see us run the ball and stop the run. I'm with you there. You build a sweet team and good coaches, everyone will want to come here. That's true, but you got to win as well. Everything looks great on paper until we start losing, but honestly, at the same time, everything looks great on paper, but if you're not winning, still nobody's going to come. Don Burr says it's not tanking, it's not having the talent to overcome as of right now. But the fact is we do have some talent on the roster. Not Don's point, that's not a fact. About what? How about not having the talent? Dr. Detroit says 5 to 6 wins tops. Again, I respect your opinion, Dr. Detroit, but I don't see it. I think we have enough talent. Like I said, Matt Patricia uttered 5 wins. Dan Campbell and this way better, way improved coaching staff gets at least 7. That's what I see. 7 to 9 wins. That's where I see us right now. And you may not believe that, and I don't think we're going to be a playoff team. We do not have playoff potential, I don't believe. And Dr. Detroit is right. We have some talent, but not enough to make the playoffs. That is true. That I will 100% agree with you on. But I think we're closer to 7 to 9 wins than 5 to 6 wins. So that's fair enough. 9 to 9 wins will get us in the playoffs. That's possible. Yes, but we do need to build a team through the draft. Majority of Super Bowl teams are built through the draft. That's true. That's very, very true. That's very true. Some talent, not enough to take some talent, not the talent. What are y'all watching? LOL. Ryder, you said that last year too, so I will take a grain of salt. I mean, hey, I was excited for last year, and Matt Patricia let me down incredibly. So it is what it is. If we don't take Thibodeau, I may introduce you to George Karlaftis. Good. I like it. All right. 5 to 6 wins, not a fact, 7 minimum. I agree with you. I agree. I think that's more where we're going to be. The biggest key will be to stay healthy through training camp, start the season healthy. I agree. The Lions have struggled a lot with injuries though the past couple of years. And I think the Lions got some guys now that are going to be healthier, hopefully going to be more available. Hopefully our strength and conditioning coach can get players a little bit more available for games. But I agree. I think health is going to be a big part of this. But I will say the Lions have built up some decent depth as well. And I think the depth this year is better than last year's. We are building the trenches now, and we will get more skilled players next year. I'm with you with that. Okay, lol, see you after 5 wins and watch the excuses. I mean, there's no excuses this year. There's not any expectations this year to need excuses. Everybody thinks we're going to be trash. So if we're trash, everybody's right. And if we're not, everybody's wrong. It is what it is. There's, no expectations. There's no excuses next year. Next year is a launching point. Next year is us setting the bar. It's not, there is nowhere right now where the bar is. There's no bar right now sitting anywhere. It's just where we finish is where we finish. Finish the job next year and draft the defensive end. and safety. I'm with you. Depth, where writer. I mean, our offensive line might be the deepest in the NFL. Our running backs are pretty solid. Our wide receivers don't have any great like top end players, but they have some depth with them. The cornerback room is pretty deep. The linebacker room is pretty deep, definitely deeper than last year. Like I said, our depth this year is way deeper and way better than it was last year across the entirety of the team. Don Berg, can you say? Don, can you say the same to you if you get more than 6? That's fair enough. But like here, I'll go to the Lions schedule right now. Detroit Lions 2021 schedule. People are saying we should trade for OBJ. Absolutely not. Please do not. I'd be so mad. I said 5 to 6 win top, so if you get 7, woo. I mean, hey, 7's better than 6, I guess. Expectation comes with an emotional investment. That's fair. No one is saying that we are trash. We are saying we have a team full of players who have not played together and coaches who have not coached together. It's like splitting hairs. I mean, everybody's saying 5 to 6 wins. I just disagree. I think we'll be a little bit better than that. Looking at the schedule, you have where that's the preseason. So we're going to start with the 49ers. I think we could beat the 49ers. I really, really do. Motor City Sports says, please don't trade for him. Fair enough. No OBJ for sure. But I think we can beat the 49ers. I think we split with the Packers this year. I think we can do that. That's 2 wins. I think we win 1, if not 2, against the Bears, which is, 3 to 4 wins. I think we split the Vikings, which is 5. We should beat the Bengals, which is 6. We should beat the Eagles, which is 7. Let's see. We should beat the Broncos, which is 8. We should beat the Falcons. That's maybe 9. Cardinals, we beat them last year. So, I mean, there are genuinely 7 to 9 games that the Lions should, or at least have a really, really good chance of winning. They won't get OBJ. They did do that. They would draft Micah Parsons. I agree. Ryder, please take a bet with me on the Niners. I said the Lions can win. I didn't say they were going to, but I think they definitely can win. Shanahan's fine, but that 49ers team was very injury prone, and I understand that they're going to start healthy, and they're a good team when they're healthy, but the Lions are going to run the football, and it's going to be strength against strength. It's going to be the Niners defensive line versus the Lions offensive line, and the Lions may not win that game, but I think the offensive line, if the strategy, if they are used correctly, if our players are utilized right, I think the Lions are going to give the Niners a run for their money in week 1. We can beat the Niners off of sheer excitement and adrenaline from Coach Campbell. Fans in the stand after a while, you're off for sure, 100%. I think we can beat the Niners. I really do. As I said, the Niners is a very winnable game. Packers winnable game. Bears winnable game. Minnesota winnable game. Ravens, I don't think there's much of a chance there, but of course it's always possible. The Bengals, I think, should be a win. Eagles should be a win. Steelers late in the season, they fall apart late in the season, so that could be a win. Bears, another win. Broncos, another win. Vikings could be another win. Falcons should be a win. Arizona, I think we're pretty close with them. I mean, right there, that's how many games that are winnable. The only games that I think are really like games that you're going to go into thinking, oh my God, this might be a long day, is Baltimore, LA, Cleveland, and Seattle. And Seattle maybe not even be that good because Russell Wilson, I mean, things have been kind of on the quiet end recently, but I mean, there was a lot of disagreement early. And if the Packers lose Rodgers, I think we sweep them. I think the 49ers are a good team. I'm not sure if they win 10 games. I think they're going to be right around that if they're healthy. We need to sign a linebacker and safety in free agency on cheap, short-term prove-it deals. Malik Hooker and Quan Alexander are worth the risk. If we sign Quan Alexander and Malik Hooker to short-term deals, I'd love that so much. That would be like ideal. That'd be so great. I'd love those 2 signings, especially cheap prove-it deals. I'd be so excited. The game of the season is going to be Goff versus Stafford. Yeah, it will be. I think I just totally blanked. I think they are. I think they lost quite a bit of players. Yeah, I don't disagree. Right, the people keep putting our O-line in top 5, but that's not set in stone, and everybody in the league will know we will run the ball, so the scheme will make Goff beat us with his arm. But everybody said we were going to run the ball last year, and that didn't work. I mean, nobody knows what the Lions are going to do until they actually do it. So yeah, they can prepare for the run, but the Lions are building an O-line where even if you prepare for the run, they're still going to do it. They're still going to run the ball. And they're still going to be good at it. So, and Goff is fine. Goff is not a bad quarterback. So I'm not too worried about it. At the same time, the Lions every week scheme to stop X, Y thing last year, and they didn't do it. So just because you scheme to stop something doesn't mean that's how it's going to work on the field. Don, I'll be happy regardless the win total if this regime shows they're capable. I look at what we have, players and coaches, and I think we can get 7 with the schedule. I agree. 7 and 9 wins, that's the most. Like I said, 9 wins is probably my cap. 9 wins is probably my cap, is where I'm like, 9 wins is kind of the upper edge. It's like if the Lions got 9 wins, like that would be probably like best case scenario. And 9 wins might not be the best. 9 wins might not be enough to make the playoffs, but I think 9 wins is capable. I think 9 wins is possible. Like I said, I think it's probably closer to 7 to 8, but 9 wins I think is kind of your best, like top tier, best outlook. Right, are you drinking that mix Luke made? I see. Hey, I'm just here to tell you how I see it. Lions scheme with Patricia was like oil and water. They don't mix. Exactly. But they still plan to stop certain things. I mean, I'm sure they plan to stop Derrick Henry. They schemed to do it last year. It just didn't work. Last year is a power run scheme. We will do zone running. 100% see that. I don't think the Lions roster is bottom 5 in the NFL. If you can add a couple of solid players in the safety and maybe another wide receiver, the Lions are going to look better. That's fair. That's very, very fair. A good O-line sets everything else up. That's fair as well. You just hear pounding Kool-Aid. That's funny. But to go back to Steve O's comment, like I don't think the Lions have a bottom 5 roster in the NFL. I really don't. Talent-wise, I think the Lions, I don't think they're top 15. I don't think they're top half of the NFL, but I definitely think they're not bottom 5. I don't even think they're bottom 10 necessarily in the NFL. So, I think at that point, with some decent coaching, with, some decent coordinators, some decent play calling, the Lions can shock some people for sure. Dr. Detroit, most fans get this hype every year until we lose 3 in a row. I come in the chat like I told y'all. Hey, it is, if the Lions don't play well this year, it is what it is. But, I don't see it. I think the Lions win at least a couple early. So, but I'd prefer balance if you need to put the ball in the air. I agree with that. Balance is key. Balance is everything, and I'm excited for it. I spiked my Kool-Aid. Nice, good stuff. But I mean, at that point, I don't think the Lions have a bottom 10 roster. I don't think they have a bottom 10 coaching staff. So I'm saying 7 and 9 wins is because I don't want a QB. Hey, I mean, if you don't want a QB, it's fine. JK, no. I love to see them up. Tell them the issue, like last year with the O-line, when they all said it's fine, but it's fun. 3 years, and we are a playoff-looking team. I agree with you on that one for sure. Our roster, especially defense, is hard to judge. They had horrible coaching, and coaching scheme is crucial. I agree. The coaches, the play callers last year were horrible. I criticized them more times than I could remember. But at the same time, we don't know how this staff's going to look either. So we'll have to wait and see. It's all projection right now. And this year of any year is probably the toughest to do because we haven't seen this coaching staff play. We haven't seen any of these coordinators really call anything in a very long time. We don't know what to expect. We don't know what to look for, which I think will give the Lions a little bit of an edge early. But also could be the downfall because a lot of these guys haven't been like OCs, DCs, special teams coordinators, head coaches in a very long time, if ever. So we'll see. We'll definitely have to see. Well, if a QB is balling and we got a chance to get him, please take a quarterback. I mean, if the right guy is there and he's better than Jared Goff and we're in a good position, and if the value is there for a quarterback, I don't mind taking it, but I'm not going to say tank for a quarterback. That's just not how it's going to be. Best betting game, Lions over Cards. We get them in an early game at home after the play on Monday night. That's fair. That's fair. All I want is to see something we can build on next season. I want to see a competitive team and young guys that play good. Yeah, that's all I want. I want to see improvement and I want to see potential next year. I don't need to see all the consistency. I don't need to see 10 wins. I need to see some consistency. I need to see steady improvement and I need to see some potential. I need to see something to get excited about. If we demolish the Niners in week 1, this fan base would go wild. If we beat the Niners week 1, this fan base is going to explode. Top 5 and top 12 pick next year there, folks. Stafford looks like Stafford, and we get a top 12 pick, and they're bottom 5 team, maybe 10 team. I don't see it. I don't. If Campbell wins 2 games, do we consider Campbell incompetent? No, I don't. I do not. Like I said, there is no bar this year. So this year is just a stepping stone. I guess the bar would be whatever Patricia was able to accomplish last year. So I don't know. It's like the Pistons. They're losing bad, but I mean, you see the potential and they are the perfect example. I don't disagree with that. And I'm not a big basketball fan, but from what I have seen, the Pistons are not a good football or not a good basketball team, but they've shown a lot of potential. So, with that being said, I think the future is still bright, even though right now they're not a great not a great basketball team. So I think that's fair. I genuinely do. Steve-O, me also, I just want to see growth. That's kind of where I'm at. The NFL world would be on fire. It would be. This year is tryouts till we draft for me. Hey, that's fair. Just imagine if Goff pans out. We get all those picks and a franchise quarterback. It might not work out, but it does. But if it does, we're rolling. That's true. If Jared Goff plays even top 15 in the NFL, the Lions are going to be a good football team. And that's kind of how it is. That's kind of how I see it. Excuse me. But that's kind of how I see it. If Jared Goff is playing well, then I see the Lions having a successful season. And if he's not playing well, then I think the Lions don't. Not that Jared Goff is going to be like the one and only player to dictate the season, but quarterback play is, of course, very important. So we'll have to see. Maybe the picks we got from the Rams are better than ours. If Stafford gets hurt again, I doubt it, but it's possible. I think the Raiders had the worst draft. What the heck is that? Fair enough. I mean, is what it is. I'm rooting for Goff to pan out. That's the best scenario. I think that is the best case scenario. But with that being said, that is all we have time for today. I have a game that I have got to get to. Got to be there by 1:20-ish. So I got to go. It was fun talking Lions. I wanted to talk some Detroit Lions with all of you guys. I was appreciative. I love seeing everybody back. Everybody's so passionate, so excited about this team. Lions had a great draft. Lions had a great UDFA. They have a very, very bright future. And of course, as I said, it's been a couple of weeks. I apologize for the inconsistencies. It'll be like this probably for a week or two. Got a lot going on right now, but we will be back. We will get everything going, and in a couple weeks we're going to be back daily uploading weekly streams. It's going to be so much fun, and we are going to have so much content to go over. But until next time, that's all I got for you guys. Thank you all so much for coming out. Dr. Detroit, thank you so much for becoming the first member. I appreciate it. I hope everybody else gets a chance to come and get the special perks. But until next time, that's all we got for you guys right now. Thank you all so very much for watching, and until next time, and as always, go Lions.